Hi, everyone. I'm just waiting a minute before getting going. Welcome to my hopefully brief opinions on passwords, best practices, some things that you can do to help manage them more easily and keep them secure. So I'm just going to wait 1 minute and hopefully this one comes off without a hitch. I think my last webinar was had a fatal flaw. So I apologize for that if you were trying to tune in. Passwords are in the news a lot. And as it turns out, may have been the gateway for the massive cyber attack that we've been hearing about for the past several days. And I'm not going to dive into that. That's a subject for another day because some details are still becoming clear. But passwords and their simplicity may have played an enormous part. And I'll get to that. I'll touch on it briefly. Well, here we are for passwords. Thanks for showing up. I am on Restream.io. The link should have been in the notification you got. That is where I can most easily answer or receive and answer your questions, or just be able to read them, as I don't have visibility right now into any other platform for getting messages. So passwords. They can be the bane of our existence. We have passwords here, passwords there. We have different requirements for passwords. They get aged out before you even get used to them. And a lot of people resort to writing them down, which really is not a good practice. So I want to cover, and I will, well, why don't we just cover it? Some practices for maintaining your passwords. Now, like the state of Connecticut, for example, has a website that is not very user-friendly, and you try to extract any information from it, and you have to enter their password rules are kind of old-fashioned and archaic because their system's dated. And then you can go onto the web and sign into a media source, the New York Times, Daily News, Post, whatever, and you can use your identity from another provider like Facebook or Google to vouch for you, and you get in without ever having to create a new password. So there's that whole wide range there that we'll consider. Now, for plain old password picking, a passphrase is like a long sentence. And you may wonder, well, if I just pick this, difficult one-time password, generator that you have no connection to, it doesn't mean anything. You press, give me a complex password. You get a complex password of 8 to 15 characters, and you have to write it down because you can't remember it. So that is one kind of security password because it means nothing to anyone. The challenge is, of course, remembering it. There's another kind of password that is a phrase. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy old dog. You can type that in, and that can serve as a password. And that's called a passphrase. And you may wonder, how are they stored? Maybe you don't wonder how they're stored. I do, or I did. And what happens when you enter a password is that the system, when you set it up for the first time, does a whole bunch of mathematical operations called a hashing algorithm on it, and it stores the resultant number. A hash is a math function, and it operates on blocks of digits, so it can be any length. In fact, if you enter a passphrase that's too short, when the system that you're trying to create the account on takes your input, it adds something called a salt sometimes. And this is configurable, so it's not a guarantee, but it adds digits and then does the operation and then allows you to enter. The sign-on process from there on in, the plain text password that you created is never sent back and forth. When you enter a password, it is hashed, and then the hashes are compared. And when they are the same, you're granted access. So a hashing algorithm, this is mathematical function. With given input, it always produces the same output, always, which is good. And it obfuscates the password that you entered, but it has a downside in that anyone can come along and, hey, Bernadette, how you doing? So you can come along and generate, any number of guesses, or take a whole dictionary, compute the hash function for every entry in the dictionary, and then compare it or use the hash value to try to break in to a system. And that is the most prominent or prevalent kind of attack that there is. So using a word out of the dictionary, this is called a dictionary attack in the cyber world. You don't want to actually just come along and use any word out of the dictionary, no matter how weird or complex it is, because the entire dictionary, you can buy these tables of computed hashes on the dark web. So an attacker is, thanks for dropping in, and thanks for testing the messaging function on Restream.io. My cousin dropped in and said hi. So the password hashing, or the ability of any cyber criminal to take a dictionary, dictionary file of computed hash values and compare them against, or try to use them against against the site for which they have usernames, that's a common kind of attack. Now, because you have 1 million passwords and you're using them all over the place, you can come up with a combination of your nickname for a resource, like a bank site or a credit card, and some version of a sentence you say to yourself all the time. I just want to get this done in case there's anyone else jumping in who's short on time. This is a password selection trick, right? Obviously, don't use a line out of a famous movie, round up the usual suspects, or, whatever one you may come up with. If you use it all the time in your own head, in your inner dialogue, that's one thing. If you say it aloud in social settings, don't use that one. But you can use something like, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy old dog on the way to my first bank, and then it tripped and bounced a check. Or the key is to get a passphrase and then take some liberties with substitution, the @ sign for lowercase a's, or alternately capitalize and use lowercase letters for various pronouns. But you can use the same sentence and give yourself a hint. You don't want to say, at Bank of America, because the Bank of America algorithm may look for a string. They may be looking for you're creating a new password when you use the formal name of the organization or the site. It can kick you out. I've tested this, I've tried it, and some providers do and some providers don't. So you come up with a sentence, right? And you think about it, write it down. You can take the first letter of each word. You can take the first letter of the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy old dog, right? So that's T, G, B, F, J, O, T, L, O, D. You can add a numeral 2, steal his food, right? And maybe that's your grocery store online ordering site in these pandemic times. So the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy old dog to steal his food. It's ShopRite. It's Big Y or whatever. That. And the key is to just keep it long and easily memorable. So it could be the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy old dog on the Book of Faces. Quick brown fox jumps over, and you just use it in such a way that you pick one that you'll remember, and then use nicknames for your various destinations that you'll remember. And this will help. You can write down, if you need a reminder, you can write dog, or you can write your dog's name, and so, this is a site I switched over to the new password algorithm. Because is memorizing, writing them down is death. Using simple passwords never helps anyone, and except the attackers. And you need them complex enough. So come up with a quirky little thing. If your O's or zeros, or you do a numerical substitution, some character substitution, and you should be covered. By all means, reach out to me if you have any questions about implementing something like this. The one thing that I want to mention about hashes for your benefit is that the output of a hash function is always a fixed length. So no matter how long or how complex, you could type for a half hour, and it's going to hash down to 256 bits of output. The ability of an attacker to rent enough computing power on the dark web to grind against a site, trying to break in. This is why people reuse passwords, right? The great Yahoo password breach of a while ago. Millions and millions of sets of credentials were stolen. So they had username, because often a website's username is your email address, and then they had a hash value for the password. So they could go to 100 different banks and try that username password combination. This is one of the ways if an attacker has a table of credentials from one site, it's because we are creatures of habit. It's going to try to an attacker will try to reuse credentials in other sites that ultimately yield some bucks. So having a different password at each site is great. This is a way, the way I outlined is one way to overcome that. Right. So sophisticated attackers do things like, they pre-calculate, hash tables. That's a dictionary attack. They also pre-compute hashes based on shorter strings, and this is called a rainbow table attack. I'm not going to dive into it because it gets a little funny with the probabilistic nature of the output. But if you're on a government agency, IT department, you're concerned about this. If it's about stealing one credit card, one piece of credit card information, maybe not. So we have a number of different ways to combat the attacks. If you ever have, let's talk about Amazon for a minute. You can enable two-factor authentication. Great idea, because any website that can, spend your money on one click, should have like a little more check and balance built in. Convenient for spending your money. You know, Amazon has a patent, I believe, on the one-click purchase. Great for spending your money, and it's also great for an attacker because you can log in, log in and lose it. But two-factor authentication forces a different channel, a side channel, to vouch for you as well. So the SMS text version is okay because it's separate. It's a separate channel. But SMS texts are not encrypted. So a spy organization is going to be able to be in your general vicinity, try out a set of credentials, and then when prompted for the two-factor authentication, can sit there in free space, duplicate your phone's receiver and get the digits. So it's more work, but if you're a high-value target, a well-funded agency will let you, get you to do that. As far as the rest of us, there are applications that will take the place of the SMS text. It's a phone, it's a mobile device. When you download apps and you are focused on the usefulness of the apps and the functions of the apps, a lot of people don't read the fine print of where their phone data can go, which is why I never do banking, never, ever, ever on my mobile device. But that's just me, and a strong recommendation for the same, unless you go through and realize you've given your camera, your voice, and you've given 20 or 30 other companies the right to monitor those at any time. That's another story. So passwords, getting back to passwords. Two-factor authentication. Enable it wherever it's available if you want to be secure. I'm kind of spiraling off here. In terms of a bunch of accounts at work, this big breach, there was a somewhat wide open door left in a software vendor piece of software for updates. How many times have you sat down at a laptop at home and you have to download an update and your machine needs to update, and you just sign into the site and get the update. Well, this particular provider, they make a network management software. SolarWinds is the name of the company, and their particular platform, the Orion platform, lets network people, lets system administrators like security folks log in and download. Where the software lets us see the status of networks, status and performance of websites, status and performance of servers, so that when you jump on and complain, there's a complaint that comes in that the server's slow, this thing is slow. There's some analysis that can be done. Do we have any disturbances in the network? The answer is no. It looks more like a user problem, so somebody can take that ticket and resolve it. So this system has privileges all throughout corporate networks, throughout government agency networks, and the password to log in to the download update section was SolarWinds 123. So in the realm of, are you kidding me? we're lazy. People are lazy. And if that was in there, somebody stuck something in there just to finish testing, to finish functionality testing, to finish ensuring that the updates are going to download smoothly and not break any functionality. Because when you're dependent upon these systems to monitor the health of your network, I mean, those things can't go down, because then you're flying blind. So somebody stuck something in there to facilitate development, and it never changed. Got rolled out to production, became, that's one of the many failures of that whole big cyber breach. But it was an easily guessed password, and it was a password that had the provider name in it. So you don't want to use Facebook 123 for your Facebook password, because that's going to be in the dictionary of attacks that are used against you. So nicknames, long passphrases, picking first letters out of a big sentence, or if you can use the entire phrase and just keep typing, that's great, because then you get spaces and punctuation marks that become special characters. But you definitely want to pick an algorithm. Pick a sentence that you say to yourself, figure out how you're going to use it, in your nicknames for your services that you're logging into, and go from there. Now, there is a standard called OAuth, and this is the standard that lets you use your credentials. It lets one site vouch for you. If you want to create an account at thenewyorker.com, you can actually use Google to authenticate to the New Yorker, or even a merchant site like Wish.com, or any of these other marketplace kind of sites. You can log in with Google. Now, does Google send your password to that site? No. These things work by there's a background established trust between them, where if you go to this new site and they say, do you want to log in with Google, and you click yes, it queries Google for to validate your identity, and you get a token sent to your system. And this happens behind the scenes, and the token is an encrypted string of numbers and letters and all that. And with that, and that's between you and Google, then that token's sent to the provider, which double checks it, and you get let in. That's great. If your authentication provider account is rock solid with a complex password that you change fairly frequently, and by fairly frequently, every 60, 90 days, it sounds like a drag. How do you go back and remember? Well, if you have your notes that make sense to you and you only, the dog algorithm, you'll remember how, a previous generation if you need to. So there are hashes we discussed. We discussed, some attacks where they generate, they pre-compute an unabridged dictionary worth of password hashes, and vary it. They take the most common passwords, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And append digits at the end. They make their own variables that have been seen in the wild, and that's how they're attacked. I do want to make one more point about how long your passwords should be, and the answer is, of course, as long as possible. And here's why. Think about $1,000. The number 1,000, and think about it in terms of money. $1,000. That's a 4-digit number. 5 digits, 10,000. 6 digits, 100,000. 7 digits, 1 million. Each additional character that you add to a password, with alphanumeric and character sets, maybe you'll have up to 50 potential characters for each. So instead of just 10 for each multiple, it's 50. So if you can make it 15 digits long, great, do that. The longer the better. And the more work that has to go into cracking your particular password, the more likely you are to never get it cracked, unless, of course, it's a government agency and they're specifically looking for something on your computer. But the longer the better. The work factor increases exponentially. I'm having some trouble with the words I've been meaning to use. So longer the better. Rotate them. Come up with unique names for the sites that you plug into. OAuth. If you use OAuth and you're going to use, a provider like Google, make sure that those credentials are rock solid. And I don't want to beat this to death, and I feel like I'm approaching the point I'm beating the subject to death. I feel like I'm forgetting to say something, which is probably why. But what I'm going to do is let you get back to your day. Hopefully this helped. Please drop me a comment here or there. And take care. We'll be talking to you.